Eliza Chen stared at the golden envelope on the kitchen counter, tracing her finger along the embossed lettering. The morning light streamed through the windows of their lakeside mansion, catching on the metallic ink that spelled out, Nathan, Chen and guest. Just and guest. Not, and Eliza Chen. Not, and wife. Just and guest. As if she were interchangeable, an accessory to be chosen like a tie or a watch. She sipped her coffee from the chipped mug she'd owned since college, the one Nathan always teased her about but never actually threw away. 15 years together and still, parts of her refused to fit into this world of wealth he'd created around them. "Did you see it came?" Nathan called out as he rushed into the kitchen, hair still damp from his shower, tablet in hand. At 42, he maintained the energy and enthusiasm of the 27-year-old startup founder she'd met at a tiny coffee shop when he couldn't afford more than a plain black coffee. "I saw," she said, sliding the invitation toward him. "Seems they forgot something." Nathan grabbed an apple from the fruit bowl, taking a bite before glancing down at the card. He frowned, chewing slowly as he picked it up. "What am I missing?" he asked, scanning the text. "My name," Eliza said quietly. "It just says and guest." Nathan's frown deepened as he set down his half-eaten apple. "That's weird. Must be a mistake. You're the chairwoman of our foundation, for crying out loud. Everyone knows who you are." But they didn't, not really. To the tech world, to the Billionaires Club Nathan now belonged to, she was an oddity. The wife who still drove her 10-year-old sedan instead of the fleet of luxury cars in their garage. The one who shopped at discount stores and volunteered every Thursday at the animal shelter, scooping litter boxes alongside college students fulfilling community service requirements. "I'll have Caroline call them," Nathan said, reaching for his phone. Eliza put her hand on his. "Don't make a fuss, it's fine." "It's not fine," he insisted, though his phone was already buzzing with messages pulling his attention away. "It's the Technological Innovation Gala. It's the biggest night of the year, and you're my wife." She smiled at him, this man who had somehow gone from eating ramen in a studio apartment to being worth billions, all while keeping that same look of boyish determination. "You have your meeting," she reminded him. "The cryo project presentation? The one you've been working on for months?" Nathan glanced at his watch and cursed under his breath. "I'll have Caroline fix this, I promise." He kissed her quickly, grabbed his tablet, and was gone in a whirlwind of expensive cologne and nervous energy. Eliza sat alone in their massive kitchen, looking out at the lake where a pair of ducks floated peacefully. The gala was 3 weeks away. She should be excited. It was supposed to be the public unveiling of Nathan's most ambitious project yet. A revolutionary cryogenic preservation technology that promised to extend human life indefinitely. Not immortality, he always corrected, but a pause button. A way to preserve the human body until medical science caught up with whatever was killing it. Her phone buzzed with a text from Nathan. Caroline on it. "Love you. Big breakthrough today. Can feel it." She texted back a heart emoji, then went to get ready for her shelter shift. The cats and dogs didn't care how much her husband was worth or whether her name was on some invitation. "We've handled the invitation issue," Caroline said later that afternoon when Eliza stopped by Nathan's office building. His assistant didn't look up from her computer, her perfectly manicured nails clicking against the keyboard. "They'll send a new one." Eliza shifted the box of Nathan's favorite donuts she'd brought him. "Thank you, Caroline." Carolyn glanced up, her smile. Professional but cool? At 34, she was closer to Eliza's age than most of Nathan's employees, but there had always been a strange distance between them, as if Caroline were protecting Nathan from his own wife. "He's in with Dr. Hayes at the moment. The test. Results came in, and they're reviewing them." Something in her tone made Eliza pause. "Is everything okay? With the project?" "Of course," Caroline said, her smile tightening. "Dr. Hayes has been an incredible asset. Her background in cellular biology has really pushed the technology forward. Nathan's quite impressed with her insights." Eliza had met Dr. Vivian Hayes exactly twice. The first time at the company holiday party, where the stunning scientist had barely acknowledged her before pulling Nathan into a conversation about molecular degradation. The second time was at a fundraiser where Dr. Hayes had spoken passionately about the future of human evolution, while Eliza stood in the background, feeling increasingly irrelevant. "I'll just leave these for him," Eliza said, placing the box on Caroline's desk. "Tell him I stopped by?" As she turned to leave, the glass door to Nathan's office swung open. Nathan emerged, his face animated, followed by Dr. Hayes, who was pointing to something on a tablet. They were so engrossed in conversation they nearly walked right into Eliza. "Liz!" Nathan exclaimed, using the nickname only he was allowed to. "Hughes, what are you doing here?" "I brought donuts," she said, feeling suddenly foolish. "From that place in the city you like." "That's my thoughtful wife," Nathan said, putting an arm around her shoulders and giving her a quick squeeze. "Vivian, you remember Eliza?" Dr. Hayes looked up from her tablet, her expression shifting into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Of course. The animal shelter volunteer, right?" "Among other things," Eliza said. She'd run a legal aid clinic before Nathan's company took off and now chaired their charitable foundation. But somehow people always remembered the cats and dogs. "Eliza was a corporate lawyer before I dragged her into my crazy world," Nathan said proudly. "Best decision I ever made, getting that coffee where she was working on case files." "Fascinating," Dr. Hayes said, in a tone that suggested it was anything but. "Nathan, we should really finish going through these results before the board meeting." Right, Nathan said, his mind already drifting back to work. "Liz, I might be late tonight. This is big, really big. The preservation rate has doubled in the new trials." "That's wonderful," Eliza said, meaning it. Whatever her feelings about Dr. Hayes, the work Nathan was doing could change countless lives. "I'll see you at home whenever you're done." Nathan kissed her cheek and disappeared back into his office with Dr. Hayes, already deep in conversation again. Caroline watched the exchange with a carefully neutral expression. "The new invitation should arrive next week," she said, as Eliza gathered her purse to leave. "Though Dr. Hayes suggested your name shouldn't be added to the list at all." Eliza froze. "Excuse me?" Caroline's expression remained impassive, but there was something almost like sympathy in her eyes. "She said you seem uncomfortable at these events, that perhaps you'd prefer not to attend." Nathan disagreed, of course. "I see," Eliza said, her voice steadier than she felt. "And when was this discussion?" "This morning," Caroline said, after the invitation arrived. "Thank you for telling me," Eliza said, unsure if Caroline was being cruel or kind. Either way, she appreciated knowing. 2 weeks passed. The new invitation never came. When Eliza checked the event website to see if perhaps they could just register online, she found something that made her stomach drop. There, in the list of confirmed attendees, Nathan Chen and Dr. Vivian Hayes. Not, and guest. Not, and Eliza Chen. A specific name. Vivian Hayes. That evening, Eliza sat in their living room waiting for Nathan to come home, the tablet with the attendee list open on her lap. At midnight, he still wasn't home. She texted him. "Working. Late," she wrote. His reply came quickly. "Breakthrough. Incredible results. Having dinner with team to celebrate. We'll tell you everything tomorrow." She stared at the message, then looked back at the attendee list. She opened their shared calendar, the one Nathan rarely checked but that Caroline always kept updated for him. There it was, added that afternoon. Dinner meeting, Nathan, Vivian, Chez Michel, 8 p.m. Not team dinner. Just Nathan and Vivian. Eliza set down her phone and looked around their beautiful home, at all the space and luxury that had never quite felt like hers. She had stood by Nathan when he had nothing. She had believed in him when his ideas seemed impossible. She had loved him before the world knew his name, and now it seemed she was being erased, one guest list at a time. Nathan returned home just after midnight, his steps quiet as he entered their bedroom. Eliza lay still, pretending to sleep, listening to the familiar sounds of him removing his watch, emptying his pockets, the soft thud of his shoes hitting the carpet. The mattress dipped as he sat on the edge of the bed. "I know you're awake," he whispered. Eliza opened her eyes. Nathan sat hunched over, still in his work clothes, tie loosened and hanging like a limp flag of surrender. Outside, snow had begun to fall, the first of the season, dusting the world in white. "How was dinner?" she asked, her voice carefully neutral. "Productive," he said, not meeting her eyes. "The new test results are better than anything we could have hoped for. The cellular preservation rate is nearly perfect now." "Congratulations," she said, sitting up. "Vivian must be thrilled." Nathan's hand stilled on his tie. "The whole team is excited. Strange that your calendar only showed dinner with you and Vivian." "Not the whole team." He turned to face her, his expression torn, between guilt and frustration. "Caroline schedules dozens of meetings a day for me. Sometimes details get lost. Like my name on the gala invitation?" Nathan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I told you that was a mistake." "Was it also a mistake that the attendee list on the website shows you're going with Vivian Hayes? Not your wife, not a generic guest, but specifically Dr. Hayes?" Nathan's face went from tired to alert in an instant. "What? No, that's not possible." Eliza reached for her tablet on the nightstand and pulled up the website. She handed it to him without a word. Nathan stared at the screen, scrolling through the list of names, his face growing harder with each second. "This is wrong," he said finally. "I never authorized this." "Then who did?" "I don't know," he said, his voice tightening. "But I'm going to find out." He stood abruptly, reaching for his phone. "It's after midnight," Eliza reminded him. "I don't care," he said, already dialing. He walked out of the bedroom, his voice carrying back to her as he moved down the hall. "Caroline, I need you to explain something to me. Right now." Eliza got out of bed and followed him, wrapping her robe around her against the chill. She found him in his home office, pacing in front of the wall of windows that looked out over the lake, now barely visible through the gently falling snow. "I don't care who approved it," he was saying into the phone, his voice razor sharp. "I want to know why my wife's name was removed and Dr. Hayes's was added without my knowledge." Eliza leaned against the doorframe, watching her husband's face in the reflection of the dark window. She'd seen this expression before, in the early days when investors tried to push him around, when competitors attempted to steal his work. It was the look of a man who appeared easygoing until crossed. "The gala is in 5 days," he continued. "I want this fixed by morning, or I'll know why." He ended the call and stood staring out at the snow for a long moment before turning to find Eliza watching him. "Caroline claims the event organizers requested the change," he said, his voice controlled but angry. "Apparently Dr. Hayes contacted them directly about representing the company with me, since the gala will feature our cryogenic technology." "And no one thought to ask you? Or tell me?" Eliza asked. Nathan shook his head. "Something's not right. Caroline's usually meticulous about checking with me for these things." Eliza entered the room and sat in one of the leather chairs opposite his desk. "When did things change between us, Nate? When did I become someone who could be erased so easily?" Nathan crossed the room and knelt in front of her chair, taking her hands in his. "You haven't been erased, you couldn't be. You're the most real thing in my life. But not in your world," she said softly. "Not in the world of galas and investors and brilliant scientists pushing the boundaries of human existence. In that world, I'm just the simple wife who doesn't quite fit." "That's not true," he insisted. But his eyes flickered away briefly. "You've always been a part of everything I do." "I used to be," she agreed. "But lately? This past year? I feel like I'm becoming a footnote in your story instead of a main character." Outside, the snow fell harder, beginning to stick to the ground and the trees around the lake. "I've been preoccupied with the project," Nathan admitted. "It's the most important work I've ever done. If we can perfect this technology, do you know what it means? People with terminal illnesses could be preserved until cures are found. Organs could be kept viable for transplant indefinitely. The applications are endless. I understand what's at stake, Eliza said. What I don't understand is why that means I have to disappear. Nathan squeezed her hands tighter. You're not disappearing. I won't let that happen. His phone buzzed with an incoming message. He glanced at it, then back at Eliza, conflict clear on his face. Read it, she said. He picked up the phone. His expression darkened as he read the message. What is it? She asked. It's from Roy Sullivan, he said, referring to the head of his board of directors. Apparently there's an emergency meeting tomorrow morning that I wasn't informed about. The board wants to discuss strategic partnerships for the cryogenic technology. Without telling the CEO? Eliza asked, her legal mind immediately suspicious. Exactly, Nathan said. He looked back at his phone, scrolling through more messages that were apparently coming in. Roy's warning me. He says Vivian has been meeting privately with board members, suggesting the company should be exploring military applications for the technology. Military applications? Isn't the whole point of your work to preserve life, not take it? Nathan stood and began pacing again, his agitation visible in every movement. Absolutely. I've been explicit about this from day one. The Chen Cryogenic Initiative is about saving lives, extending human potential, not weaponizing it. Then why would Vivian? Money, Nathan cut in. Military contracts are worth billions, and not just American military. Any government would pay a fortune for technology that could create super soldiers who don't feel cold, don't need as much oxygen, can survive extreme conditions. Eliza felt a chill that had nothing to do with the snow outside. Do you think that's why she's been trying to push me aside? Because I'd object? Nathan stopped pacing and looked at her, really looked at her, as if seeing her clearly for the first time in months. You were a legal ethics specialist before we met. Your foundation work focuses on humanitarian causes. Of course they'd see you as an obstacle. They? Who's they, Nate? Nathan sat heavily in his desk chair. I don't know yet, but I've had suspicions for a while that someone's been accessing secure servers, reviewing patents before they're filed. I thought it was industrial espionage, maybe a competitor. But what if it's internal? What if Vivian is working with board members to take control of the technology? The gala, Eliza said suddenly. They want to announce something at the gala, don't they? That's why they needed me out of the picture. Nathan's eyes widened with realization. The prototype will be there for demonstration. We're showing it to potential investors, medical research partners, or military contractors, Eliza finished for him. They stared at each other across the desk, the snow falling harder now, beginning to swirl in the wind that had picked up. What are you going to do? Eliza asked. Nathan's face hardened with resolve. First, I'm going to cancel our attendance at the gala. Won't that raise suspicions? A small, fierce smile crossed Nathan's face. Let them be suspicious. Second, I'm going to call an emergency board meeting of my own for this afternoon. Third, he leaned forward, taking her hand across the desk. I'm going to need your help, your legal mind, your ethical compass. I've been too wrapped up in the science to see what's happening around me. Eliza felt something unlock inside her, a door that had been gradually closing over months of feeling increasingly irrelevant. What do you need me to do? Help me understand exactly what they might be planning, what legal maneuvers they could be making, how we can protect the technology, keep it true to its purpose. The wind howled outside, plastering snow against the windows. It's going to get ugly, isn't it? Eliza asked. Nathan nodded, his expression grim but determined. Very likely. Are you sure you want to be involved? Eliza stood and walked around, the desk to him. She placed her hands on his shoulders, looking down at this brilliant, sometimes oblivious man she'd chosen to love. Nate, I've been fighting to stay involved. Don't you dare try to protect me now. He pulled her into his lap, holding her close. I'm sorry, he whispered against her hair. I've been blind. We'll fix it, she said, watching the snow transform their world outside. Together. They stayed like that for a long moment. The storm, Growing stronger outside, unaware that miles away in a downtown penthouse, Vivian Hayes was also awake, reviewing confidential files on her tablet, making notes for the board meeting neither of them was supposed to know about. By morning, the snow had piled 6 inches deep, unusual for so early in the season. Eliza stood at the kitchen window, watching a cardinal bright against the white landscape as she sipped her coffee from her familiar chipped mug. Nathan had been up since before dawn, making calls in his office, his voice occasionally rising, enough for her to catch fragments of anger and determination. She checked her phone. 3 missed calls from the animal shelter. She had completely forgotten her Thursday shift. She quickly texted an apology, explaining a family emergency had come up. It wasn't exactly a lie. Nathan emerged from his office, eyes red-rimmed from lack of sleep, but focused with a clarity she hadn't seen in months. "Roy's on our side," he said, accepting the cup of coffee she handed him. He suspected something was off too, but couldn't pin it down. He's been keeping records of unusual board activities. "What about Caroline?" Eliza asked. Nathan shook his head. "Not answering my calls. That tells me everything I need to know." The doorbell rang, startling them both. They weren't expecting visitors, especially not with the roads in their condition. "I'll get it," Nathan said, setting down his coffee. Eliza followed him to the front door, staying back in the hallway as he opened it. Cold air rushed in, along with a flurry of snowflakes that melted instantly on the warm floor. "Dr. Hayes," Nathan said, his voice neutral. "This is unexpected." Vivian Hayes stood on their doorstep, immaculately dressed in a charcoal gray coat, not a hair out of place despite the weather. Snow dusted her shoulders like dandruff, the only imperfection in her appearance. "Nathan," she said, her smile professional but cold. "I hope you don't mind the intrusion. The board meeting has been moved up, and I thought we should align our presentation before walking in." "You'd better come in," Nathan said, stepping aside. Vivian entered, her eyes briefly registering surprise at seeing Eliza standing in the hallway. "Mrs. Chen," she said with a slight nod. "I didn't realize you'd be here." "Where else would I be?" Eliza asked. "This is my home." An awkward moment passed before Nathan gestured toward the living room. "We can talk in there." Vivian removed her coat, revealing a tailored dress underneath, and handed it to Nathan as if he were a valet. He caught Eliza's eye over Vivian's shoulder and gave the briefest eye roll, a small but meaningful moment of solidarity. "Would you like some coffee, Dr. Hayes?" Eliza asked, determined to maintain the social niceties despite the tension crackling in the air. "That would be lovely," Vivian said. "Black, no sugar. And please call me Vivian. After all, we'll be attending the gala together." "Actually," Nathan said as they entered the living room, "we won't be attending the gala at all." Vivian froze mid-step. "I beg your pardon?" "I've canceled our participation," Nathan said, his voice firm. "Both the attendance and the demonstration." Vivian's composed facade cracked for just an instant before she recovered. "That's impossible. The investors are expecting it. The military representatives—" She stopped herself. "Military representatives?" Nathan repeated, exchanging a glance with Eliza. "I wasn't aware we had invited military personnel to view the technology." Vivian sat down on the edge of the sofa, her back straight as a ruler. "There's been interest from several sectors. The board felt it prudent to explore all options." "Without consulting me," Nathan said. "It wasn't a question." Eliza left to get Vivian's coffee, glad for a moment away from the tension. In the kitchen, she took a deep breath, trying to calm the mixture of anger and vindication swirling inside her. She had been right. They were trying to sideline her because she was a complication to their plans. A moral compass pointing in the wrong direction. When she returned to the living room, Vivian and Nathan were sitting in silence, the air between them thick with unspoken accusations. "Your coffee," Eliza said, handing Vivian the mug, not one of their elegant ones from the formal dining set, but a plain ceramic one with a chip on the rim, just like her own. Vivian took it without a word of thanks, her eyes fixed on Nathan. The board won't accept this. The cancellation. The board doesn't have a choice, Nathan replied. I'm still the CEO and the patents are in my name personally, not the company's. For now, Vivian said softly, the threat implicit in her tone. Is that what today's meeting is about? Nathan asked. Removing me as CEO? Vivian took a sip of coffee, her lipstick leaving a perfect red crescent on the white mug. I think you're being paranoid, Nathan. The board simply wants to discuss expanding applications for the technology. You've been so narrow in your vision. Saving lives is narrow? Eliza asked, unable to keep silent any longer. Vivian turned to her with a pitying smile. The technology can do so much more than what Nathan envisions. Yes, medical applications are important, but think bigger. Military uses, space exploration, enhanced human capabilities. Playing God, you mean? Eliza said. Vivian's smile didn't waver. Evolution is the story of creatures adapting to survive. We're simply accelerating that process. That's not what I developed this technology for, Nathan said, his voice hard. Vivian set down her coffee and stood. I can see this conversation isn't productive. I'll see you at the meeting, Nathan. 1 o'clock, main boardroom. She glanced at Eliza. This is a shareholders' meeting. I'm afraid you won't be permitted to attend. Actually, Nathan cut in, Eliza owns 30% of the company shares. I transferred them to her name last year. The look of shock on Vivian's face was worth more than all the fancy galas in the world. Eliza kept her expression neutral, though inside she felt a surge of warmth at Nathan's revelation. Not just because of the shares, but because he'd done it without fanfare, without using it to score points until this moment. I wasn't aware of that arrangement, Vivian said, her composure slipping. There's a lot you're not aware of, Nathan replied. We'll see you at the meeting, Dr. Hayes. After Vivian left, Eliza turned to Nathan. 30%? Really? Nathan shrugged, a small smile playing at his lips. I signed them over on our anniversary. I was going to tell you at dinner, but we got that call about the stray dog you'd been looking after, and we spent the night at the emergency vet instead. I completely forgot that was our anniversary, Eliza admitted. I know, Nathan said, his smile growing. That's why I love you. You cared more about a suffering dog than about celebrating a date on the calendar. Eliza felt tears prick at her eyes. We have to stop them, don't we? They're going to try to take your company. Nathan nodded, his smile fading. Not just the company, the technology itself. If they can force a vote removing me as CEO, the next step would be challenging the patent ownership. Can they do that? They can try, Nathan said grimly. But I've got one advantage they don't know about. What's that? You, he said simply. The simple woman they thought they could erase. The company headquarters loomed against the gray sky, snow still falling around it. Eliza sat beside Nathan in the back of their car, dressed in a simple but elegant dark blue suit she usually reserved for foundation board meetings. Ready? Nathan asked, as the driver pulled up to the main entrance. Eliza nodded, though her stomach was in knots. It had been years since she'd been in a corporate battle like this. Back in her legal days, she'd seen ugly boardroom fights, wealthy men and women tearing each other apart over money and power. Inside, the building hummed with nervous energy. Employees glanced their way as they walked to the elevator, whispering, behind their hands. News of the emergency board meeting had clearly spread. Mrs. Chen, a surprise security guard, said when they reached the executive floor, "We weren't told you'd be attending." "Change of plans, Paul," Nathan said smoothly. "My wife will be joining us today." The boardroom doors were closed when they arrived, voices already rising and falling behind them. Nathan squeezed Eliza's hand, once, then pushed open the doors. 12 faces turned toward them, expressions ranging from surprise to dismay to, in Roy Sullivan's case, carefully concealed relief. Vivian Hayes sat at the far end of the table, in what was normally Nathan's chair. "Ah, Nathan," said Harold Wilson, the board's vice chairman and oldest member, "and Mrs. Chen, this is unexpected." "Is it?" Nathan asked, his voice pleasantly cold. "I believe shareholders are permitted at any board meeting." "Of course," Harold said, his bushy eyebrows drawing together. though typically spouses don't attend. I'm not here as his spouse, Eliza said clearly. I'm here as a 30% shareholder and as legal counsel for Nathan Chen personally. A ripple of murmurs went around the table. Vivian's face had gone still, her eyes calculating. Now, Nathan said, taking a seat midway down the table with Eliza beside him. I believe we have some matters to discuss regarding the future of my technology. Outside, the snow continued to fall, blanketing the city in silence, while inside, the real storm was about to begin. Silence fell over the boardroom. 12 pairs of eyes shifted between Nathan and Vivian, like spectators at a tennis match waiting for the serve. Eliza sat straight-backed beside Nathan, her legal pad in front of her, pen poised. She might have left corporate law years ago, but some habits never died. Before we begin, Harold Wilson said, clearing his throat, I move that we discuss the propriety of Mrs. Chen's presence at this meeting. Seconded, said Pamela Ortiz, a newer board member who had been brought in by Vivian 6 months earlier. The bylaws are clear, Eliza spoke before anyone else could. Any shareholder owning more than 5% of the company has the right to attend board meetings. She smiled politely. Unless the bylaws have been amended without proper notification? Harold's face reddened slightly. No, but then there's nothing to discuss, Nathan cut in. My wife stays. Roy Sullivan, seated halfway down the table, caught Eliza's eye and gave a slight nod of approval. At least they had one ally in the room. Vivian tapped a perfectly manicured nail against the polished table. Fine, let's move on to the actual agenda. She nodded to her assistant, who began distributing folders to everyone around the table. As you'll see from the projections, military applications of the Chen cryogenic technology could triple our revenue within 18 months. Nathan didn't open his folder. The technology isn't ready for any applications yet. We're still in the testing phase. The preliminary results are strong enough, Vivian countered. The military is willing to fund the rest of the development if we pivot now. Pivot, Nathan repeated, his voice flat. Interesting choice of words for completely abandoning the medical applications we've been working toward for years. Not abandoning, Vivian said smoothly. Simply expanding our horizons. Military contracts would provide the capital we need to eventually pursue the medical applications as well. Eliza opened her folder and scanned the documents inside, her legal training kicking in. This proposal includes transferring the patents from Nathan personally to the company, she noted, looking up. That wasn't mentioned in your little speech. Several board members shifted uncomfortably. Apparently, that detail hadn't been highlighted to them either. It's standard practice, Vivian said with a dismissive wave. Individual ownership creates unnecessary complications. It also prevents the technology from being weaponized against my wishes, Nathan said, his voice quiet but firm. Which is exactly why the patents are in my name. This is bigger than your personal wishes, Nathan, Harold interjected. We're talking about national security applications, technology that could help our soldiers survive extreme conditions, save lives on the battlefield. By turning people into what? Nathan asked. Super soldiers who don't feel pain? Who can be frozen and stored until needed for the next war? He shook his head. That's not saving lives. That's creating weapons. You're being naive, Vivian said, her perfect mask slipping to reveal frustration. Do you think other countries aren't pursuing similar technology? China, Russia, they're all racing toward the same goal. If we don't get there first, then maybe no one should get there at all, Nathan interrupted. Some lines shouldn't be crossed. Eliza continued scanning the documents, her training allowing her to pick out the legal traps buried in the dense paragraphs. This proposal also includes a clause giving the board authority to replace the CEO with a 2/3 vote instead of the current 3/4 requirement. More uncomfortable shifting around the table. Clearly, not everyone had been briefed on all the details. Administrative streamlining, Vivian said, though her eyes had hardened. Coup preparation, Eliza corrected. She set the folder down and looked around the table. Let me be clear about what's happening here. Dr. Hayes has negotiated with military contractors to repurpose technology that isn't hers to sell. She's attempting to transfer patents that legally belong to my husband, and she's trying to change company bylaws to make it easier to remove him if he doesn't cooperate. That's a gross mischaracterization, Vivian snapped. Roy Sullivan spoke up for the first time. Is it? Because that's exactly how it appears to me as well. He looked around at his fellow board members. We were told this meeting was about exploring additional applications and funding sources, not about undermining our founder and CEO. It's about the future of this company, Vivian insisted. Nathan's personal feelings are holding us back from billions in potential revenue. My personal feelings, Nathan said, are that human beings shouldn't be treated as weapons to be deployed, frozen, and stored at will. That's not a minor detail we can agree to disagree on. The room fell silent again, the weight of what was really at stake settling over everyone. Outside, the snow continued to fall, accumulating in drifts against the windows of the high-rise building. Eliza studied the faces around the table, trying to gauge where each person stood. Harold and Pamela were clearly with Vivian. Roy was with them. The others seemed uncertain, waiting to see which way the wind would blow before committing. I have a counter-proposal, Nathan said suddenly. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out folders of his own, which he slid across the table. The Chen Foundation will buy back all company shares at a 30% premium over current market value. The company can continue with its existing products and services while the cryogenic technology and related patents remain with me personally. Vivian laughed, the sound brittle in the tense room. You can't be serious. The technology is worth billions, potentially trillions over time. Yes, Nathan agreed, which is why it can't be controlled by people who see it only as a weapon or a profit center. This is absurd, Harold sputtered. You can't just take the technology and walk away. Actually, he can, Eliza interjected. The patents are in his name. The research was funded primarily through his personal wealth, not company resources. Legally, the technology belongs to Nathan, not Chen Technologies. The board won't accept this, Vivian said, her voice cold with anger. I think we should vote on it, Roy suggested. Nathan's offer is generous and it would give the shareholders a substantial return. A vote now would be premature, Vivian insisted. We need time to review the proposal, consult with financial advisors. Are you worried you don't have the votes, Dr. Hayes? Eliza asked quietly. Vivian's eyes narrowed to slits. You have no place here, she hissed at Eliza. You're nothing. But a charity case he picked up and dusted off. You don't understand what's at stake. The room went deathly quiet. Nathan's face darkened with a fury Eliza had rarely seen. Before he could speak, Eliza placed a hand on his arm. I understand perfectly, she said, her voice steady. What's at stake is whether technology meant to preserve life will be used to take it instead. Whether scientific breakthroughs will serve humanity, or just those who can pay the highest price. She looked around the table. I may be simple in your eyes, Dr. Hayes, but I can still tell right from wrong. A murmur went around the table. Several board members who had seemed on the fence now looked uncomfortable with Vivian's naked contempt. I move that we vote on Nathan's proposal now, Roy said firmly. Seconded, said Thomas Lee, another board member who had been quiet until now. This is irregular, Vivian protested. So was scheduling this meeting without properly notifying the CEO, Roy countered. Shall we vote? The next few minutes were tense as each board member voted. In the end, it was 7-5 in favor of Nathan's proposal. Not a landslide, but a clear majority. Vivian sat rigid in her chair, fury radiating from her in almost visible waves. This isn't over, she said quietly as the meeting began to break up. Actually, it is, Nathan replied. The vote is binding. The lawyers will draw up the paperwork. In 2 weeks, I'll no longer be CEO of Chen Technologies, and you all will be considerably wealthier. And the technology, Vivian asked, will continue to be developed as it was always intended, Nathan said. To preserve and protect life, not to weaponize it. As they left the boardroom, Roy fell into step beside them. That was well played, he said quietly. but she won't give up easily. We know, Eliza said. What do you think her next move will be? Roy glanced over his shoulder to make sure no one was within earshot. The gala is still happening, with or without you, and I heard through back channels that she's invited some very high-level military officials. I think she might be planning to demonstrate the technology anyway. That's impossible, Nathan said. The prototype is in my private lab at home. Roy's expression was grim. Are you certain about that? Nathan stopped walking, his face suddenly pale. The backup prototype, he said. It's in the company lab. I didn't think it was operational yet, but if Vivian's been working on it in secret. Eliza felt a chill that had nothing to do with the snow still falling outside. We need to go. Now. They hurried toward the elevator. Eliza's mind was racing. The woman they had tried to erase from the guest list was now their biggest problem. And somehow she and Nathan had to stop her before she turned a technology meant to save lives into something that could destroy them. The night of the gala arrived with the worst blizzard in 10 years. Snow whipped through the city streets, piling, in drifts against buildings and cars. Weather advisories urged people to stay home, but the technological innovation gala would not be deterred. Too much money, too many powerful people involved. Eliza sat at their kitchen island, her laptop open, dressed not in an evening gown but in practical black pants and a sweater. Beside her, Nathan paced, phone to his ear. The secondary lab was accessed last night, he said as he ended the call. Security footage shows Vivian and 2 technicians removing equipment. They must have been working on the backup prototype for weeks without my knowledge. Do you think it's operational? Eliza asked, looking up from her screen. It might be, but it would be unstable. The cooling system wasn't properly calibrated yet. Nathan ran a hand through his hair, worry etched on his face. If they try to demonstrate it tonight, people could get hurt, Eliza finished. She turned her laptop so Nathan could see the screen. I've been monitoring social media mentions of the gala. Look who's confirmed to attend. Nathan scanned the list, his expression growing darker. The Secretary of Defense, 3 4-star generals, representatives from defense contractors. He looked at Eliza. She's going to sell it to the highest bidder tonight. Can you shut it down remotely? Not if they've modified the prototype, but there might be another way. Nathan pulled out his own laptop. Every version of the technology has the same basic operating system. I wrote it myself. If I can get close enough to connect to its network, you could send a kill command, Eliza said, understanding immediately. Exactly. Nathan's fingers flew over the keyboard. I need to write it now, though. Once we're there won't be time. Eliza stood. I'll get ready, I'll drive while you work on the code. You know they won't let us in, Nathan warned. After that board meeting, Vivian will have security. Looking for us. Eliza smiled grimly. Let me worry about that. You focus on the kill switch. An hour later, they were in Eliza's old sedan, crawling through snow-clogged streets toward downtown. Nathan sat in the passenger seat, still typing furiously on his laptop, occasionally muttering to himself when something didn't work as expected. Eliza drove carefully, hands gripping the wheel tightly. Her mind kept returning to the moment in the boardroom when Vivian had called her a charity case. The words had stung, but they'd also clarified something for her. For years, she'd felt like an outsider in Nathan's world, as if she didn't quite belong. Now she realized it didn't matter. What mattered was doing what was right. Almost there, she said as the glittering skyscraper came into view, its top floors disappearing into the swirling snow. I'm ready, Nathan said, closing his laptop. The kill command is written. I just need to get within 50 feet of the prototype and connect to its network. What will it do exactly? It will trigger a controlled shutdown, then encrypt the operating system so thoroughly it would take years to crack. The hardware will be useless without it. They pulled up to the valet stand. Men in heavy coats hurried to open doors for arriving. Guests, most of whom were being dropped off by chauffeurs in luxury cars, not arriving in old sedans with chips in the windshield. Ready? Nathan asked, tucking his laptop into a slim briefcase. Eliza nodded, pulling out her phone. I have a plan to get us in, but we may not have much time once we're inside. They stepped out into the swirling snow. Eliza handed the valet her keys with the same confidence she'd seen in women who owned cars worth 20 times as much. Nathan took her arm, and they walked toward the entrance, where security guards were checking invitations. IDs, please, said a guard as they approached. Before Nathan could speak, Eliza handed over her phone. We're on the security exception list, Eliza Chen and Nathan Chen. The guard looked skeptical but checked her phone. His eyebrows rose slightly. One moment, please. He stepped away to consult with another guard. Eliza felt Nathan squeeze her, arm in question. Roy Sullivan, she whispered. He added us to the security clearance list. He's inside already watching Vivian. The guard returned, now respectful. My apologies, Mrs. Chen, Mr. Chen. Please go right in. They entered the soaring lobby, decorated with ice sculptures and blue lighting that made everything look frozen. Waiters circulated with champagne and appetizers. The elite of the tech and business world mingled, oblivious to the storm outside or the one brewing inside. The demonstration is scheduled for 9 o'clock in the main ballroom, Eliza murmured, as they made their way through the crowd. That gives us 30 minutes. Nathan kept his briefcase close. We need to find the prototype. It'll be backstage in the ballroom being prepared. They moved carefully through the crowd, avoiding people who might recognize them. Twice they had to change direction when they spotted board members who had voted against them. There's Roy, Eliza said, nodding toward a corner where their ally stood, pretending to listen to a group of investors while his eyes scanned the room. They made their way to him. Roy excused himself from his conversation and turned to them with relief. You made it, he said quietly. Vivian's been showing off all evening, telling potential partners about the breakthrough they'll be witnessing tonight. Where's the prototype? Nathan asked. Backstage, heavily guarded. She has 4 private security contractors watching it. Not regular event security, these guys look military. We need to get back there, Nathan said. If I can't get close enough to connect to its network. Leave that to me, Roy said. He pulled out his phone. I'm still a board member after all. I'll create a diversion. When the guards move, you two slip backstage. What kind of diversion? Eliza asked. Roy smiled grimly. The fire alarm kind, not the full system, just enough to pull security away. For a few minutes, be ready. He disappeared into the crowd. Nathan took Eliza's hand, holding it tightly. Whatever happens, he said, I want you to know that you've never been a charity case. You've been my conscience, my compass. Eliza squeezed his hand back. Save it for when we've stopped a military catastrophe. 3 minutes later, a commotion erupted near the entrance. Shouts about a small fire, security rushing to respond. In the confusion, Nathan and Eliza slipped through a side door marked, Authorized Personnel Only. The backstage area was dimly lit and cluttered with equipment. At the far end, they could see a glowing blue light, the distinctive signature of the cryogenic prototype. There it is, Nathan whispered. But where are the guards? As if in answer, a voice called out from behind them. Looking for something? They turned to find Vivian standing there, 2 large men in dark suits flanking her. She wore an elegant evening gown that shimmered like ice, her smile cold and triumphant. Nathan, and the simple wife, how did you get in? We were invited, Eliza said, by the board member who isn't in your pocket. Vivian's smile didn't falter. It doesn't matter. In 20 minutes, I'll be demonstrating this technology to people who understand its true value. By tomorrow, the contracts will be signed. The prototype isn't stable, Nathan warned. The cooling system isn't properly calibrated. If you try to demonstrate it tonight, it could malfunction catastrophically. Nice try, Vivian said. My team has been working on it for weeks. It's perfectly stable. Your team doesn't understand the core operating system, Nathan insisted. No one does but me. We've managed just fine without you, Vivian said dismissively. She nodded to her guards. Keep them here until after the demonstration, then escort them out. Quietly. As she turned to walk away, Eliza called after her. Why did you hate me so much? Why try to erase me? Vivian paused, glancing back over her shoulder. Because he listens to you. Because you keep him thinking small. Hospitals and sick children when he could be changing the world. Because you're ordinary, and this technology is anything but. She walked away, leaving them with the guards. Nathan looked at Eliza, real fear in his eyes for the first time. I need to get to that prototype, he whispered. If they try to activate it at full capacity. Eliza squeezed his hand once. Then, let go. Excuse me, she said to the larger guard. I think I'm going to be sick. She bent over, making retching sounds. The guards exchanged disgusted looks. The smaller one stepped back. Don't get it on the floor. While their attention was on Eliza, Nathan edged sideways, trying to get a line of sight to the prototype, to open his briefcase just enough to activate his laptop. Eliza straightened suddenly and drove her elbow hard into the larger guard's solar plexus, a move she'd learned in self-defense classes years ago. He doubled over, gasping. The second guard lunged for her, but Nathan was faster, swinging, his briefcase into the man's head. Go, Eliza shouted, already running toward the prototype. They reached it just as alarms began to sound. Not the localized fire alarm Roy had triggered, but something more urgent, accompanied by flashing blue lights. System overload, Nathan said, recognizing the warning signs. They're trying to activate it at full power. He yanked open his briefcase, pulling out his laptop. His fingers flew over the keys as he established a connection to the prototype's network. Hurry, Eliza urged, watching the door where Vivian had disappeared. They'll be back any second. Almost there, Nathan muttered. Come on, come on. On the stage beyond the curtain, they could hear Vivian's voice addressing the crowd, describing the technology that would revolutionize warfare as we know it. The prototype hummed louder, its blue light intensifying to an almost painful brightness. Got it, Nathan exclaimed as his screen showed a successful connection. He hit a final key, just as Vivian said, and now, allow me to demonstrate. The prototype's light flickered, then began to dim. The humming slowed, then stopped entirely. From the stage came confused murmurs, then Vivian's voice, tight with controlled panic. A minor technical issue, just one moment. Nathan wasn't done. His fingers continued to fly over the keyboard, encrypting the operating system, inserting the kill switch that would make the technology unusable for military purposes. Nathan? Vivian's voice rang out as she burst through the curtain, her face contorted with fury. What have you done? But it was too late. The screen on Nathan's laptop showed 100% complete. The prototype was now just an expensive paperweight. What I should have done from the beginning, Nathan said, standing to face her. Made sure this technology can only ever be used to preserve life, never to take it. Vivian's eyes blazed with hatred. You'll regret this. Both of you. No, Eliza said quietly. I don't think we will. As security converged on the backstage, area drawn by the commotion, Eliza took Nathan's hand. Together they walked past Vivian, past the confused guards and technicians, through the ballroom where wealthy investors were now milling about in disappointment, and out into the lobby. Roy met them at the entrance, a look of question on his face. It's done, Nathan told him. The prototype is useless to them now. And the technology? Roy asked. Safe, Nathan said, where it belongs. Outside, the snow had stopped, though drifts piled high along the sidewalks. The night sky had cleared, stars visible above the city lights. Eliza breathed in the clean, cold air, feeling as if she'd emerged from more than just a building. What now? She asked as they waited for the valet to bring her old car. Nathan looked at her, really looked at her, in a way he hadn't in too long. Now we start over. Build something new. Together. As they drove away from the gala, leaving behind the powerful, people who had tried to turn a life-saving technology into a weapon, Eliza thought about Vivian's words. About being ordinary in an extraordinary world. Maybe being ordinary, being human, with all the compassion and conscience that implied, was exactly what the extraordinary world of power and money and technology needed most.